You woke up this morning and reached for your phone before your eyes were fully open. You brushed your teeth the same way you did yesterday, probably holding the toothbrush in the same hand, starting on the same side of your mouth. You took the same route to work, ordered the same coffee, and sat in the same spot you always sit. And here's the thing that should terrify you. You don't remember deciding to do any of it. Right now, as you're watching this, you think you're in control. You think you're making choices. But neuroscience has some bad news for you. You're not driving your life. Your habits are. And most of them, you didn't even consciously choose them. They chose you. There's a reason casinos are designed the way they are. There's a reason you can't stop checking your phone, even when there's nothing new. There's a reason you've tried to change the same behavior 17 times and failed 16 of them. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're fighting a war you don't even know you're in. Your brain is running a sophisticated autopilot system that controls about 40% of everything you do. And the scary part? It's been programmed by fast food companies, tech executives, and every random experience you've had since childhood. You're essentially a biological machine running someone else's code. But here's what they don't tell you. Once you understand how the system works, you can reprogram it. So let's pull back the curtain on the neuroscience that's been controlling your life without your permission. Let's get right into it. Number 12, the Autopilot Takeover. Your brain is lazy. Not in the I'll start my diet Monday way, but in the neurological sense where it's constantly looking for shortcuts to conserve energy. Every single action you take requires processing power, and your brain treats its glucose supply like a miser hoarding gold coins. So what does it do? It automates everything it possibly can. That morning coffee ritual where you somehow end up holding a mug without remembering walking to the kitchen? That's your basal ganglia taking over, turning conscious decisions into unconscious routines. Neuroscientists estimate that about 40% of your daily actions aren't actually decisions at all. They're habits running on autopilot while your prefrontal cortex takes a nap. Your brain literally chunks sequences of actions together into single neurological units, like creating a macro in a video game. The terrifying part? You're not even aware it's happening. You think you're in control, making choices, living intentionally, but really you're just a meat puppet being operated by routines you programmed years ago. That's why you can drive home from work and not remember a single turn you made. Your consciousness was just a passenger while your basal ganglia drove the car. Essentially, you've outsourced most of your life to the biological equivalent of a very efficient but completely mindless intern. Number 11. The Cue-Craving industrial complex. Every habit follows the same neurological pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's a cue, a routine, and a reward. That's it. That's the whole game. Your phone buzzes, that's the cue. You check it, that's the routine. You get a little dopamine hit from the notification. That's the reward. Do this enough times, and your brain starts anticipating the reward the moment it sees the cue. Eventually, the cue itself triggers a craving before you even complete the routine. This is why your hand reaches for your phone before you consciously decide to check it. Marketing executives have known this for decades and have weaponized it with terrifying efficiency. The smell of popcorn in a movie theater isn't an accident. It's a carefully engineered cue designed to trigger a craving. Fast food restaurants pump artificial scent into the air around their buildings. Casinos remove all clocks and windows so you lose track of time while the repetitive sounds of slot machines become cues for the next pull. Your entire environment is basically a minefield of engineered cues trying to hijack your habit loop. Companies spend billions studying the exact neurological sequence that turns a customer into a compulsive user. You're not weak-willed. You're just fighting against teams of PhDs who've spent their careers learning how to exploit your basal ganglia. It's like bringing a stick to a gunfight, except the gun is made of neuroscience and capitalism. Number 10. The Keystone domino effect. Some habits are more powerful than others, and researchers call them Keystone habits because they trigger a chain reaction of other behavioral changes. Start exercising regularly, and suddenly you're eating better. Not because you decided to overhaul your entire life, but because the exercise habit creates a ripple effect that restructures other patterns. Studies show that people who start making their bed every morning are more likely to stick to a budget, be more productive at work, and report higher levels of well-being. Making your bed doesn't magically make you better with money, but it creates a sense of small accomplishment that your brain then seeks to replicate in other areas. It's like your basal ganglia gets a taste of that completion dopamine and thinks, oh, we're doing structured behavior today. Cool, let's keep this energy going. The military has known this forever, which is why basic training is obsessed with seemingly pointless routines. They're not actually trying to create soldiers who can bounce a quarter off their sheets. They're installing Keystone habits that promote discipline across all behaviors. Your brain doesn't see habits as isolated incidents. It sees them as evidence of identity. Once you start identifying as the kind of person who exercises, you unconsciously begin acting like that person in other contexts too. It's identity-based habit formation, and it's both incredibly powerful and slightly manipulative that your own brain is gaslighting you into consistency. Number 9, the dopamine prediction error. Your reward system is basically a 3-year-old who gets excited about the wrong things. Dopamine isn't actually a pleasure chemical. It's a learning chemical that fires when reality exceeds expectations. This is a critical distinction that most people miss. When something better than expected happens, you get a dopamine spike. When something happens exactly as expected, nothing. When something worse than expected happens, you get a dopamine drop. This means your brain is constantly making predictions and updating them based on outcomes, which is how habits get reinforced or extinguished. Here's where it gets weird. Your brain releases more dopamine for the cue that predicts a reward than for the reward itself. The anticipation is literally more powerful than the payoff. This is why gamblers feel most alive right before they pull the slot machine lever, not after they win. It's why checking your phone is more addictive than actually reading the message. Your dopamine system is firing on the possibility of reward, not the guarantee. Tech companies have figured out how to exploit this with variable reward schedules, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Sometimes you get likes, sometimes you don't, and that unpredictability keeps your dopamine system in a constant state of anticipation. Your habit loop isn't running on pleasure, it's running on the neurochemical equivalent of, ooh, what if this time is different? You're basically a lab rat pressing a lever, except the lever is Instagram and you're doing it voluntarily. Number 8, the forgetting curve trap. Breaking a habit isn't about willpower, it's about disrupting the cue routine reward loop enough times that your brain forgets the association. Neuroscientists have discovered that habits never actually disappear, they just get overwritten by new patterns. The neural pathways remain encoded in your basal ganglia like dormant software, waiting for the right trigger to boot up again. This is why people who quit smoking for years can suddenly relapse after one cigarette in a moment of stress. The cue triggers the old pattern, and boom, the pathway lights up like it never left. Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered the forgetting curve in the 1880s, showing that information fades from memory over time unless it's reinforced. Habits work the same way, but in reverse, they need to not be reinforced for the association to weaken. The problem is that life is full of repeat cues. You can avoid cigarettes for months, but you can't avoid stress forever. Eventually, the old cue shows up, your brain reaches for the old routine, and you're back at square one. The only way to truly break a habit is to create a new routine that responds to the same cue with a different behavior, essentially teaching your brain a new dance to an old song. But here's the kicker. This requires conscious effort for weeks or months until the new pathway becomes stronger than the old one. Your brain doesn't delete habits, it just plays favorites based on which neural pathway has been traveled more recently. You're basically in an eternal competition with your past self for neurological dominance. Number 7, the context conspiracy. Your environment is controlling you more than you realize, and it's not even subtle about it. Research shows that habits are deeply tied to physical contexts, which is why it's so easy to maintain good habits at the gym, but so hard to do push-ups in your living room. The location itself becomes part of the cue. During the Vietnam War, about 20% of American soldiers were using heroin regularly, and the military was terrified of a massive addiction crisis when they came home. But something strange happened. 90% of the addicted soldiers simply stopped using when they returned to the United States. Not because of intervention or treatment programs, but because the environmental cues disappeared. No Vietnamese jungle, no heroin routine. Their habit was tied to the context, and once the context changed, the behavior extinguished itself. This is why people who move to a new city often find it easier to reinvent themselves. The old environmental triggers are gone, so the old habits don't fire automatically. It's also why trying to study in your bed is a disaster. You've trained your brain that bed equals sleep, and now you're fighting against years of conditioning. Every location in your life has associated behaviors encoded into it. Your couch means Netflix. Your desk means work. Your kitchen means snacking. These aren't conscious associations, they're neurological shortcuts, and they're sabotaging every attempt you make to change your behavior in those spaces. The solution isn't more discipline, it's designing your environment to support the habits you want instead of constantly battling the cues you've embedded everywhere. Number 6, the craving engine. Your brain doesn't want the thing, it wants the feeling the thing produces. This distinction breaks a lot of people's brains when they first hear it, but it's fundamental to understanding why habits are so hard to change. You don't actually crave a cigarette. You crave the sense of relief or the ritual of stepping outside. You don't crave junk food. You crave the comfort or the distraction from boredom. The physical object is just the delivery mechanism for the emotional state you're actually seeking. Researchers figured this out by studying rats who would press a lever to get cocaine. When scientists blocked the dopamine receptors in the rats' brains, they expected the rats to stop pressing the lever because they couldn't get high anymore. Instead, the rats pressed it even more frantically, because the craving was still there even though the reward mechanism was disabled. The wanting was separate from the liking. Your habits are chasing emotional states, not physical objects, which is why substituting one behavior for another can work if they produce similar feelings. Stressed people who quit smoking often start eating more, not because they're hungry, but because eating provides a similar oral fixation and momentary escape. The habit didn't go away, it just found a new costume. This is why understanding what emotional need your habit is serving is more important than trying to white-knuckle your way through quitting. Your brain will find another way to meet that need, so you might as well choose a healthier delivery system than let your basal ganglia pick one at random. Number 5. The 21-day myth. Everyone's heard that it takes 21 days to form a habit, and everyone who's actually tried to change a behavior knows that's complete garbage. This myth comes from a plastic surgeon named Maxwell Maltz who noticed his patients took about 21 days to adjust to their new faces. Somehow, this observation about facial recognition got bastardized into a universal rule about habit formation, despite having zero scientific basis. Actual research from University College London found that it takes an average of 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic, with a massive range from 18 days to 254 days, depending on the complexity of the habit and individual differences. Simple habits like drinking a glass of water after breakfast automate quickly. Complex habits like going to the gym require months of consistent repetition before they feel automatic. But here's what nobody tells you. Even after a habit becomes automatic, it's not permanent. Miss a few days and the neural pathway starts weakening. The automation doesn't disappear immediately, but it definitely gets rusty. Your brain is constantly pruning neural connections that aren't being used, because maintaining unused pathways is metabolically expensive. This means habit maintenance is a forever job, not a 21-day project. You can't just install a good habit and forget about it like software. You have to keep running the program, or your brain will archive it to free up processing power. Basically, your basal ganglia is playing a never-ending game of neurological Jenga, and you're hoping the habits you want stay on top of the tower. Number 4. The implementation intention hack. Your brain is terrible at vague goals but excellent at following specific instructions. This is why I'll exercise more fails spectacularly while I'll put on running shoes at 6 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday actually works. Psychologists call these implementation intentions, and they're essentially pre-made decisions that bypass the need for willpower in the moment. You're telling your brain exactly what to do, when to do it, and where to do it, which eliminates the cognitive load of deciding in real time. Research shows that people who use implementation intentions are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through on their goals because they've created a clear cue routine link before the moment of action arrives. Your prefrontal cortex can make good decisions when it's calm and not under pressure, but in the moment, when you're tired or stressed, it folds like a cheap lawn chair. Implementation intentions let your well-rested, rational brain make decisions on behalf of your future tired, irrational brain. It's like leaving a note for drunk you, except you're sober, and the note is a neurological trigger. The specificity matters because vague intentions create decision points, and every decision point is an opportunity to fail. If situation X happens, then I will do behavior Y removes the ambiguity. Your brain doesn't have to wonder what to do. It just executes the pre-programmed response. It's the difference between improvising a piano solo versus playing sheet music. Both require skill, but one requires significantly less moment-to-moment decision-making. You're basically creating a behavioral if-then statement and uploading it directly into your basal ganglia. Number 3. The habit stacking trap. Attaching a new habit to an existing one sounds brilliant in theory and works great until it doesn't. The concept is simple. After I pour my morning coffee, I'll do 10 push-ups. The existing habit, pouring coffee, becomes the cue for the new habit, doing push-ups. This works because you're piggybacking on an already established neural pathway instead of trying to create one from scratch. Your brain already has a strong cue routine pattern for coffee, so you're just extending the routine sequence. The problem is that habit stacks are fragile. Miss one link in the chain, and the whole sequence collapses. If you sleep in and skip coffee, you also skip the push-ups, even though the push-ups weren't actually dependent on the coffee. Your brain has encoded them as a single unit, so disrupting one part disrupts the whole thing. This is why people who are sick for a week often lose multiple habits at once. Their morning routine falls apart, and suddenly they're not meditating, exercising, or journaling anymore because those behaviors were all stacked together in a sequence. The neurological efficiency that makes habit stacking powerful is the same thing that makes it vulnerable. You've created a dependency chain, and chains break at their weakest link. The solution is to make each link as strong as possible individually before stacking them together. But nobody does this because we're all impatient and want to install 15 good habits simultaneously. Your brain doesn't work that way, though. It needs time to encode each behavior individually before it can reliably string them together. You're essentially trying to learn a complex piano piece by playing the whole thing badly instead of mastering each measure separately. Number 2, the identity override. Your habits aren't just behaviors, they're votes for the type of person you believe you are. Every action you take is casting a ballot in the election of your identity. Go to the gym once, and you've cast one vote for, I'm someone who exercises. Do it 100 times, and the election results start looking pretty convincing. Your brain uses behavioral evidence to construct your sense of self, which means your habits literally shape your identity over time. This works both ways, though. Keep hitting snooze, and you're voting for, I'm not a morning person. Keep scrolling instead of working, and you're voting for, I'm easily distracted. The scary part is that your brain believes the behavioral evidence more than your intentions. You can tell yourself you're a writer all you want, but if you haven't written anything in 6 months, your basal ganglia is looking at the evidence and calling bullshit. This is why identity-based habits are so powerful and so dangerous. Frame a behavior as part of who you are, and your brain will defend it like a core belief. I'm not someone who quits is way more powerful than I want to finish this project. The identity framing enlists your ego in maintaining the habit, and your ego is a relentless enforcer. But this also means bad habits that have become part of your identity are incredibly hard to break because changing the behavior feels like threatening your sense of self. You're not just quitting smoking, you're dismantling part of who you believe you are. Your brain resists this violently because identity feels permanent even though it's actually just accumulated behavioral evidence. You're not discovering who you are, you're creating who you are, one habit at a time. Number 1, the relapse architecture. Your brain has built-in failure modes, and pretending they don't exist is why most habit changes collapse. There's this toxic optimism around habit formation where people act like if you just want it badly enough, you'll never slip up. That's not how neuroscience works. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for self-control and decision-making, runs on glucose and gets depleted throughout the day. By evening, your willpower is basically running on fumes, which is why most relapses happen at night. You're not weak, you're metabolically exhausted. Your basal ganglia doesn't get tired though, it just keeps running the old programs, which means the longer you go without eating or resting, the more control your automatic habits have over your behavior. This is why stressed, tired, hungry people make terrible decisions. Their prefrontal cortex has clocked out for the day, and the ancient parts of their brain are running the show. The architecture of relapse is built into your neurology. You will slip up. The question isn't whether you'll have a bad day, it's whether you've planned for it. Research shows that people who view lapses as learning experiences rather than moral failures are significantly more likely to maintain long-term behavior change. Your brain is trying to conserve energy and return to comfortable patterns, especially under stress. This isn't a character flaw, it's evolutionary biology. Hunter-gatherers who conserved energy during times of stress survived better than those who didn't. You're fighting against millions of years of evolution that optimized for survival, not for productivity or self-improvement. The relapse isn't the failure, it's a predictable part of the process. What matters is whether you treat it as data or as evidence of your inadequacy. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.